The morning sun cast long shadows across the crystal gardens of Kepler 442c, where the Velhari tended to their shimmering mineral farms. These weren't ordinary gardens. Instead of flowers, beautiful blue and purple crystals grew from the rich soil, creating a landscape that looked like something from a dream. Corvash dipped his webbed hands into the cool water that flowed between the crystal beds. As one of the lead cultivators, he had spent 40 seasons nurturing these precious stones that powered much of the galaxy's technology. The Velhari had a special gift for this work. Their gentle touch could sense exactly what each crystal needed to grow strong and pure. The Velhari were nothing like the warrior races that dominated the galaxy. They stood about as tall as humans, with smooth skin that changed color based on their emotions. When happy, they glowed with soft blues and greens. When worried, darker purples would ripple across their bodies. Their large, kind eyes had seen thousands of years of peace on their beautiful world. "Another perfect harvest," Corvash whispered to himself, watching the morning light dance through the crystals. These stones would soon travel to distant worlds, helping ships jump between stars and keeping entire civilizations running. The Velhari took pride in their work, knowing they were helping others across the galaxy. But that peaceful morning was about to end forever. The sky suddenly darkened as massive ships blocked out the sun. These weren't the friendly trading vessels that usually visited Kepler 442c. These ships were black as space itself, covered in sharp edges and weapon ports. They belonged to the Zephyrian Empire, a race of insect-like beings who had been conquering worlds for centuries. Corvash's skin flickered with nervous yellow patterns as he looked up. He had heard stories about the Zephyrians but never thought they would come here. Why would they bother with a peaceful mining colony? The answer came quickly. A booming voice echoed from speakers all across the planet, speaking in the harsh, clicking language of the Zephyrians, followed by translations in dozens of other languages. "Attention, inhabitants of Kepler 442c. This world now falls under Zephyrian jurisdiction. Our deep scans have revealed quantum crystal deposits far richer than anything your surface operations have touched. These resources are required for the Empire's expansion." Elder Thekmol, the oldest and wisest of the Velhari, gathered the frightened colonists in the great assembly hall. His usually calm blue skin now showed streaks of worried purple. For 300 years, he had guided his people through good times and bad, but nothing like this. "What do they want from us?" asked Velrina, her young voice shaking with fear. The elder's throat sacs puffed out slowly, a sign of deep concern. "They want what lies beneath our world, the ancient crystal veins that our ancestors chose never to disturb. The Zephyrians have no respect for the balance we've maintained here. The ultimatum was simple and terrible. The Zephyrians gave them 30 standard days to leave their homeworld forever. Any Velhari remaining after that deadline would be removed by force. The message was clear. This wasn't a negotiation." As news of the threat spread, Elder Thekmol reached out to every ally the Velhari had made over centuries of peaceful trade. Surely someone would help them. After all, they had provided crystals and friendship to dozens of civilizations. The responses were heartbreaking. The ethereal consortium, those beings of pure energy who claimed to value all life, sent a message of sympathy. "We feel deep sorrow for your situation," their representative said through shimmering light patterns. "However, direct intervention would violate our principles of non-interference. We will remember your sacrifice." Remember their sacrifice? The Velhari weren't looking to become martyrs. They wanted to live. The Silicon Federation, mechanical beings who had traded with the Velhari for over a century, gave an even colder response. Economic analysis shows that supporting Velhari resistance would result in 73.2% probability of trade disruption with Zephyrian territories. Cannot justify resource expenditure. Recommend compliance with Zephyrian demands. Even the Aquatic Alliance, Fellow water-loving species who should have understood the Velhari's connection to their world offered only empty promises. "We will happily accept Velhari refugees in our underwater cities," they said. "However, military action against the Zephyrian Empire exceeds our current capabilities." One by one, every species they contacted found reasons not to help. Some claimed they were too weak. Others said they couldn't risk making enemies of the Zephyrians. A few simply ignored the messages entirely. The most painful rejection came from the Celestial Order, a group of advanced beings who claimed to protect weaker species throughout the galaxy. Their response was dressed up in fancy words, but the meaning was clear. "While we sympathize with the Velhari plight, our current commitments prevent direct intervention in territorial disputes. We encourage diplomatic resolution." Diplomatic resolution? How do you negotiate with an empire that speaks only the language of force? Days passed, and the Zephyrian ships remained in orbit, their weapons trained on the surface. Occasionally, they would fire warning shots at empty areas, just to remind the Velhari that resistance was useless. The beautiful crystal gardens began to dim as fear spread through the colony. Koravash found himself working alongside the other Velhari to pack their most precious belongings. But how do you pack up a lifetime? How do you carry away the graves of your ancestors or the trees your great-grandparents planted? "Where will we go?" young Velerina asked, her skin now a constant shade of fearful gray. Elder Thekmol had no answer. The few species willing to accept refugees offered overcrowded camps and temporary shelters. The Velhari would survive, but they would never truly live again. As the deadline approached, desperation grew. Some Velhari suggested fighting back, but with what? They had no weapons, no military, no experience with war. Their entire culture was built on peace and cooperation. They were farmers and artists, not soldiers. With only 3 days remaining, Elder Thekmol made one final attempt. He activated the colony's most powerful transmitter and broadcast a message across all known frequencies, reaching every corner of civilized space. "This is Elder Thekmol of the Velhari colony on Kepler 442c. In 3 days, my people will be forced from our ancestral home by the Zephyrian Empire. They seek to strip mine our world for resources that took millennia to form. We have served the galaxy faithfully for centuries, providing the crystals that power your ships and cities. We have never raised weapons against any species. We have never taken what wasn't freely given. Now we face extinction, not of our bodies, but of our way of life. If there is anyone out there who remembers that some things matter more than profit. And politics, please. Help us. We are running out of time." The message reached thousands of worlds, was translated into hundreds of languages, and was heard by billions of beings. The response was the same as before, sympathy, but no action. The galaxy had made its choice. The Velhari were on their own. On the final night before the deadline, the colonists gathered one last time in their assembly hall. The building shook slightly from the Zephyrian ships overhead, a constant reminder of their fate. Many Velhari had already left, accepting refugee status with various species. Those who remained were the ones who simply couldn't bear to leave their home. Elder Thekmol stood before his people, his ancient skin now showing the deep purples of profound sadness. "Tomorrow we must make our choice, stay and face whatever the Zephyrians have planned, or leave everything we've ever known behind." The silence in the hall was broken only by the distant hum of alien ships. In the morning, their world would belong to someone else. The galaxy had abandoned them completely. But sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places. 3,000 light-years away from the Velhari's dying world, Captain Riley Chen was having what she thought would be a boring day. Her ship, the UES Defiance, was on routine patrol along the Outer Rim territories where nothing interesting ever happened. The crew was mostly playing cards or reading books, and Riley was catching up on paperwork when the communications officer suddenly sat up straight. "Captain, I'm picking up a transmission," Officer Jake Morrison called out, adjusting his headset. It's a distress call, but it's not from any human ship." Riley walked over to the communications station, her coffee mug still in hand. Put it through the speakers. The voice that filled the bridge was unlike anything they had heard before. It was melodious, almost musical, but filled with deep sadness. The universal translator worked to convert the alien words into English, and what they heard made everyone on the bridge stop what they were doing. "This is Elder Thekmol of the Velhari colony on Kepler 442c. In 3 days, my people will be forced from our ancestral home by the Zephyrian Empire." As the message continued, Riley felt something twist in her stomach. She had been in the military for 15 years, had seen her share of battles and politics, but there was something about this plea that hit different. Maybe it was the way the alien's voice cracked with emotion, or maybe it was the simple fact that they were asking for help and no one was answering. "How far are we from this Kepler system?" she asked her navigator. "About 2 weeks at full speed, Captain," came the reply. Riley stared at the star chart displayed on the main screen. 2 weeks. These people had 3 days before their world was taken from them. Even if they left right now, they would never make it in time. "Get me Admiral Torres at Terran Defense Station," she ordered. The holographic image of Admiral Miguel Torres appeared on the bridge 20 minutes later. He was a man in his 60s with graying hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. When Riley explained what they had intercepted, his expression grew serious. "Captain, you know I respect your judgment, but we're talking about intervening in a conflict involving the Zephyrian Empire. They have over 200 warships and control a dozen star systems. We barely have 50 ships in our entire fleet. Sir, with respect, these people have been abandoned by everyone else in the galaxy. They're peaceful miners who have never hurt anyone. How can we just ignore this?" The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Riley could see him weighing options in his mind, considering all the political and military consequences. Finally, he spoke. "Send me everything you have on this situation. I need to speak with the High Command." "Torres out." The next 6 hours felt like the longest in Riley's life. She kept thinking about the Velhari's message, playing it over and over in her head. Her crew was unusually quiet, too. Word had spread about the distress call, and everyone seemed affected by it. When the Admiral finally called back, he wasn't alone. The entire Terran High Command was on the transmission, 5 of the most powerful people in human space. "Captain Chen," Admiral Torres began, "we've been debating your report for hours. The political situation is complicated." General Patricia Liu leaned forward. "The Zephyrians have never directly threatened human territory, but they're expanding fast. If we intervene now, we might be starting a war we can't win. On the other hand," added Director of Intelligence Alex Kim, "those quantum crystals the Zephyrians want could revolutionize our technology. If we help the Velhari, we might gain access to their mining techniques." Riley felt her anger rising. "Sir, with all due respect, this isn't about crystals or politics. These are people about to lose everything they've ever known." "People?" questioned Admiral Rebecca Stone. "Captain, these are aliens. We don't know anything about them except what they told us in a single transmission." That's when Admiral Torres raised his hand for silence. "I've been thinking about this all day, about what kind of species we want to be in this galaxy. Do we want to be like all the others, making calculations about profit and loss while innocents suffer? Or do we want to be something different?" He paused, looking each member of the High Command in the eye. "When I was a young officer, my grandmother told me something I've never forgotten. She said that you can judge a person's character not by how they treat their equals, but by how they treat those who can do nothing for them. The same applies to entire civilizations." General Liu frowned. "Miguel, You're talking about risking human lives for complete strangers. I'm talking about doing what's right, Torres replied firmly. These Velhari have spent centuries helping other species, providing the crystals that keep their ships running. Now when they need help, everyone has turned their backs on them. Everyone except us. The debate continued for another hour. Some argued they should send diplomatic messages to the Zephyrians. Others suggested they could offer to relocate the Velhari to human space, but Torres kept bringing the conversation back to one simple point. If we don't stand up for those who can't defend themselves, then what good are we? Finally, a vote was called. It was close. 3 votes in favor of intervention, 2 against. Torres had the deciding vote. We're going to help them, he announced. Not because it's smart, not because it benefits us, but because it's the right thing to do. Riley felt her heart skip a beat. Sir, what are your orders? Captain, I want you to take your ship and head for Kepler 442c immediately. Your mission is to make contact with these Velhari and assess the situation. A battle group will follow, but it'll take them at least 2 weeks to assemble and reach you. Admiral, interrupted General Liu, sending one ship against a Zephyrian occupation force is suicide. Torres smiled grimly. Captain Chen isn't going there to fight, General. She's going there to buy time and let these people know they're not alone anymore. As the transmission ended, Riley turned to her crew. Every face on the bridge was looking at her, waiting for orders. Well, you heard the Admiral, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. We're going to help some people who have nowhere else to turn. I won't lie to you. This is going to be dangerous. The Zephyrians don't play nice, and we'll be outnumbered about 50-1. She paused, looking around at her crew. People she had served with for years, people she trusted with her life. Anyone who wants to transfer off this ship before we leave can do so with no questions asked and no mark on their record. This isn't officially a military mission yet, so you have a choice. The silence stretched for nearly a minute. Then Jake Morrison, the communications officer, spoke up. Captain, where exactly would we transfer to? Every other ship in the fleet is going to be heading to the same place in a couple of weeks anyway. That broke the tension. A few people chuckled, and Riley saw determination replace worry on their faces. Besides, added Chief Engineer Amy Rodriguez, someone needs to keep you from doing anything too crazy before the cavalry arrives. Riley smiled. This was why she loved her crew. All right, then. Set course for Kepler 442c, maximum speed, and someone find me everything we can about Velhari culture. If we're going to help them, we need to understand them. As the Defiance turned toward deep space and accelerated to full speed, Riley stood looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an entire species was counting down their final hours, believing they had been abandoned by the entire galaxy. They were about to find out that humans don't abandon people who need help. The UES Defiance dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, and what Captain Riley Chen saw through the view screen made her heart sink. The beautiful blue-green world that should have been peaceful was surrounded by dark, Zephyrian warships. Even from this distance, she could see flashes of light on the planet's surface, bombardment strikes that were slowly destroying everything the Velhari had built. Captain, I'm reading 12 Zephyrian vessels in orbit, reported Lieutenant Commander David Park from the tactical station. They're conducting systematic strikes on surface installations. Riley clenched her fists. They were too late to prevent the attack, but maybe not too late to save lives. Take us in, but keep us in the asteroid field, she ordered. If they spot us, this mission ends before it starts. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the ship's xenobiologist and linguistics expert, was already at her station running every scan she could. Captain, I'm detecting massive underground tunnel systems beneath the planet's surface. The life signs show most of the Velhari population has gone underground. Smart, muttered Jake Morrison from communications. They're trying to wait it out. Riley studied the tactical display. The Zephyrian ships were positioned to prevent any escape from the planet, but they seemed focused on destroying surface structures rather than penetrating the underground areas. Maybe they wanted to preserve the crystal mines. "Elena, any luck with their language patterns?" Riley asked. Dr. Rodriguez looked up from her console, excitement mixing with concern on her face. "Captain, this is incredible. The Velhari communication system is partially musical. They use tonal variations that carry emotional meaning alongside the actual words. It's like they can't lie because their feelings show in their voice. Can you communicate with them?" "I think so, but we need to get closer. The underground interference is making it difficult to establish a clear connection." Riley made a decision that would have made Admiral Torres proud and General Liu terrified. "We're going down there." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. Once they entered the planet's atmosphere, the Zephyrian ships would detect them instantly. "Captain," David said quietly, "our shields won't last 5 minutes against 12 warships." "Then we better make those 5 minutes count," Riley replied. "Elena, prepare a message in their language. Tell them help has arrived and we need coordinates for a safe landing zone." As the Defiance broke from the asteroid field and dove toward the planet, alarms started blaring on Zephyrian ships across the system. Riley watched as the enemy vessels began turning toward them, their weapons charging. "Elena, send that message now!" The transmission went out just as the first Zephyrian plasma bolts streaked past their ship. The Defiance shook as near misses sent energy surges through their shields. Then something beautiful happened. A response came back in that musical Velhari language, and when Elena translated it, the entire bridge crew got chills. "They're saying, 'We hear you, sky friends. Follow the singing crystals home.'" Suddenly, points of light began appearing on the planet's surface. Not explosions, but a gentle blue glow emanating from crystal formations across the continents. The Velhari were using their own crystal gardens to create a beacon system, guiding the human ship to safety. "I've got a landing zone," called out their pilot, Lieutenant Casey Williams. "It's in a valley between 2 crystal formations. The Zephyrians are having trouble getting a clear shot because of the terrain." The Defiance screamed through the atmosphere, Zephyrian fighters in pursuit. The ship's hull groaned under the stress, and sparks flew from overloaded systems. But Casey was one of the best pilots in the fleet, and she threaded the needle between 2 massive crystal spires before setting the ship down in a clearing that looked like it was made of pure starlight. As the engines powered down, Riley could see figures emerging from hidden tunnel entrances. The Velhari were nothing like she had expected. They moved with fluid grace, their skin shifting through different colors as they approached the human ship. Despite everything they had been through, they showed no fear, only curiosity and hope. Dr. Rodriguez was practically bouncing in her seat. "Captain, I need to get out there immediately. First contact protocols require—" "Elena," Riley interrupted gently. "Protocols are written for peaceful situations. Right now, we need to focus on keeping everyone alive." The first Velhari to approach their ship was clearly elderly, his movements careful but dignified. His skin showed deep blue patterns that Elena quickly identified as expressions of gratitude mixed with sorrow. When the airlock opened, Riley stepped out with Elena and Jake, their translation equipment ready. The old Velhari spoke first, his voice carrying melodies that no human throat could produce. Elena listened intently, then turned to Riley with tears in her eyes. "Captain, this is Elder Thekmol. He's thanking us for answering their call when no one else would. He says—" She paused, struggling with the translation. "He says they had given up hope that anyone in the galaxy still cared about right and wrong." Riley felt her own throat tighten. "Tell him we care. Tell him humans don't abandon people who need help." As Elena translated, something remarkable happened. Elder Thekmol's skin began glowing with warm golden patterns, and other Velhari who had gathered around them started showing the same colors. Elena gasped. "Captain, they're showing joy, pure, undiluted joy. They haven't displayed these colors in weeks." But the moment was interrupted by explosions in the distance. The Zephyrian bombardment was getting closer, and now that they knew, humans were on the surface. They were being more aggressive. "Elder, we need to get your people to safety," Riley said, gesturing toward the tunnel entrances. "Our fleet is coming, but it will take time." Through Elena's translation, Thekmol explained the situation. Most of the Velhari population was already in the vast underground tunnel systems that had been carved over thousands of years. They had supplies and fresh water, but the Zephyrians were slowly working their way deeper, destroying tunnel entrances and cutting off escape routes. "They're not trying to kill us quickly," Elena translated. "They want us to surrender the location of the deep crystal veins. They think if they make us suffer enough, we'll tell them where the richest deposits are located." Riley's jaw tightened. "What did you tell them?" Elder Thekmol's skin showed patterns that Elena interpreted as fierce determination mixed with sadness. "He says they told the Zephyrians nothing. The deep crystals have been growing for millions of years. Harvesting them would destroy the planet's ecosystem. The Velhari would rather die than let that happen." Over the next few hours, as Zephyrian fighters continued their attacks, something incredible began to happen. Humans and Velhari started working together as if they had been allies for years. The Velhari knew every tunnel, every hidden passage, and every crystal formation on their world. They guided human engineering teams to critical points where they could set up defensive positions. In return, the humans shared their knowledge of tactics and provided technology that could help protect the tunnels. Dr. Rodriguez found herself fascinated by Velhari crystal cultivation techniques, while Velhari scientists were amazed by human, adaptive technology. Despite the language barrier and the very different ways their species had evolved, they found common ground in their determination to protect innocent lives. Young Velhari, who had never seen aliens before, were drawing pictures of human faces and sharing them with the crew. Human Marines were learning Velhari songs that helped coordinate movement through the tunnels. Children from both species played, together in the deeper, safer areas underground. But as night fell, the situation grew more desperate. The Zephyrian bombardment was becoming more precise, and their ground forces had begun landing on the surface. Riley knew her small crew couldn't hold them off for long. "Elena, can you send a message to our fleet? Let them know the situation." "Here? Already done, Captain, but Admiral Torres's battle group is still 10 days away." Riley looked around at the faces surrounding her, human and Velhari, all looking to her for answers she didn't have. The Zephyrians had superior numbers, superior firepower, and they were getting closer to the main tunnel systems. But as she watched a human medic treating a wounded Velhari child, while a Velhari engineer showed a Marine how to navigate the crystal tunnels, Riley realized something important. They might be outgunned, but they had something the Zephyrians didn't understand. They had each other. "All right, everyone listen up," she announced. "We're going to hold this position until our fleet arrives. I won't lie to you. It's going to be tough. But we've got the best tunnel fighters in the galaxy on our side, and we've got something worth fighting for." As if to emphasize her words, the ground shook from another Zephyrian strike, but instead of fear, Riley saw determination on every face around her. The real battle was about to begin. Captain Riley Chen was checking defensive positions in the crystal tunnels when the ground beneath her feet began to vibrate differently. This wasn't another Zephyrian bombardment. This was something else entirely. "Captain!" Jake Morrison's voice crackled through her communicator. "You need to get back to the ship right now. We've got company, the good kind." Riley raced through the tunnels, following the glowing crystal markers the Velhari had taught her crew to read. When she emerged from the underground entrance, the sight above made her heart soar. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace. Human ships. The cavalry had arrived. Admiral Torres's voice filled the communication channels. "This is Admiral Torres. To all Zephyrian vessels, you are attacking a world under human protection. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Riley could see the Zephyrian fleet repositioning, caught off guard by the sudden appearance of human warships. They had 12 ships, but the humans had brought 15, including the massive dreadnought UES Indomitable. The Zephyrian response was predictable. Their commander, a being called War Prime Zaktoth, sent back a message that roughly translated to, "These crystals belong to the Empire. Leave now or be destroyed." "I was hoping you'd say that," Admiral Torres replied. What happened next would be talked about in military academies for decades. The human fleet didn't use standard engagement tactics. Instead, they did something that no other species had ever tried against the Zephyrians. They attacked like humans. The UES Indomitable led the charge, its massive bulk heading straight for the Zephyrian flagship. The alien ships opened fire, their plasma weapons lighting up space, but human ships were built different. They were designed to take damage and keep fighting. Riley watched from the surface as the space battle unfolded above them. Human destroyers darted between the larger Zephyrian cruisers like wolves attacking a pack of bears. When their shields failed, they kept fighting. When their weapons were damaged, they used whatever they had left. One human destroyer, the UES Relentless, lost its main engines but used its maneuvering thrusters to ram a Zephyrian cruiser. The impact destroyed both ships, but it also created an opening for two other human vessels to break through the enemy line. "This is insane," Dr. Rodriguez whispered, watching the battle through binoculars. "They're using their ships like weapons." Elder Tekmol stood beside them, his skin showing patterns of amazement and horror. Through Elena's translation, he said, "We have never seen beings willing to sacrifice themselves for others they barely know." But the space battle was only part of the fight. As human Marines began landing on the surface, the real test began. Zephyrian ground forces were already advancing through the crystal valleys, their insect-like forms moving in perfect coordination. Sergeant Tom Bradley led the first wave of human troops into the tunnels. His team had been fighting for less than an hour when they realized they were facing something completely new in galactic warfare, a joint human Velhari resistance. The Velhari knew every tunnel, every crystal formation, and every hidden passage on their world. They guided human soldiers through routes that let them appear behind Zephyrian forces without warning. Meanwhile, human tactical knowledge helped. The Velhari understand how to use the tunnel systems for maximum defensive advantage. "Sergeant Bradley," came Korvash's voice through the translation device, "there is a crystal chamber ahead. The singing stones will confuse their equipment." Bradley looked at his team. "You heard him. Follow our guide." The crystal chamber was like something from a dream. Massive formations rose from floor to ceiling, humming with energy that made the air itself seem alive. When the Zephyrian squad followed them into the chamber, their advanced targeting systems went haywire. "Now!" Bradley shouted. The combined human Velhari force struck from multiple directions. The Zephyrians, used to fighting conventional battles, had no idea how to handle an enemy that seemed to appear and disappear through crystal formations. But the turning point came when young Velrina, the same Velhari who had been so frightened, weeks earlier made a discovery that changed everything. She was hiding in a deep crystal cave with several human Marines when she noticed something strange. The crystals around them were resonating with the Zephyrian equipment, but not in a harmful way. They were interfering with it. "Lieutenant Cooper," she said to the Marine beside her, "the crystals. They sing in harmony, but the metal being's tools make discord." Cooper didn't understand at first, but when Velrina touched one of the crystal formations, the sound it made caused a nearby Zephyrian scanner to spark and shut down. "Holy cow," Cooper breathed. "Elena, get down here. We've found something important." Dr. Rodriguez arrived 20 minutes later, and what Velrina showed her made her eyes go wide. The Velhari had lived with these crystals for so long that they instinctively understood how they worked. The formations could be tuned to create specific frequencies that disrupted Zephyrian technology. "Captain Chen," Elena called over the radio, "the Velhari can turn their entire crystal network into a weapon." Riley was leading a defense of one of the main tunnel entrances when the message came through. "What kind of weapon?" "Not destructive, disruptive. They can tune the crystals to shut down Zephyrian equipment across entire regions." Riley looked at Elder Thekmol, who was coordinating Velhari movements from a crystal grove nearby. "Elder, can your people really do this?" Through Elena's translation, his response made Riley smile. "We have been listening to the crystal songs for 1,000 generations. It is time to teach them a new melody." What happened next was like nothing anyone had ever seen. Across the continent, Velhari crystal tenders began working together, touching different formations and creating harmonies that resonated through the planetary crystal network. The effect on Zephyrian forces was immediate and devastating. Their weapons stopped firing. Their vehicles shut down. Their communication systems went silent. For the first time in their military history, the mighty Zephyrian war machine was helpless. But War Prime Zaktoth wasn't finished. As his ground forces collapsed, he made a desperate decision. He ordered his remaining ships to bombard the crystal formations directly, even if it meant destroying the very resources the Empire wanted. "If we cannot have these crystals, then no one can," he transmitted to all frequencies. That's when Admiral Torres made a choice that would define him for the rest of his life. The Zephyrian flagship was charging its main weapon, preparing to crack the planet's surface and shatter the crystal network forever. "All ships, this is Admiral Torres. Ramming speed, target the flagship." "Sir," came the voice of his tactical officer, "that's a suicide run." "Sometimes, son, dying for the right reason is the only way to really live." The UES Indomitable turned toward the Zephyrian flagship and accelerated to maximum speed. The alien ship fired everything it had, but Torres's ship kept coming. Other human vessels joined the charge, creating a wall of metal and determination that no force in the galaxy could stop. The collision lit up the sky like a second sun. When the light faded, both the Indomitable and the Zephyrian flagship were gone, but their sacrifice had saved the planet. War Prime Zaktoth's remaining ships, seeing their leader's fate and facing continued resistance from the crystal-disrupted ground forces, began to withdraw. The mighty Zephyrian Empire, for the first time in its history, had been defeated by a smaller force. As the last enemy ships fled into hyperspace, humans and Velhari emerged from the tunnels together. The crystal formations around them hummed with a new song, one of victory and hope. Riley stood in the crystal garden where this had all begun, watching human medics work alongside Velhari healers to tend the wounded. She thought about Admiral Torres, about all the humans who had given their lives for people they had never met before today. "Captain," Elder Thekmol approached, his skin showing colors that Elena translated as deep gratitude mixed with wonder. "Why did your people do this? We offered you nothing in return." Riley looked around at the mixed groups of humans and Velhari, working together, and she smiled. "Elder, that's exactly why we did it." 3 months after the battle, Captain Riley Chen stood in what used to be a war zone and could barely recognize it. Where Zephyrian bombardment had once left craters and destruction, new crystal gardens were growing. But these weren't like the old ones. These gardens were different. They were a collaboration. Human engineers had worked with Velhari crystal tenders to create something neither species could have built alone. The new formations not only grew the precious crystals that powered galactic civilization, but they also served as a planetary defense network. Any hostile force approaching the system would find their technology disrupted before they could even enter orbit. "Captain Riley!" called a familiar voice. Valerina came running across the crystal field, her skin glowing with the happy blue patterns that had become so common among the Velhari lately. In her arms, she carried a small crystal formation that hummed with a gentle melody. "Look what we made!" she said excitedly, holding up the crystal. "It sings in both human music scales and Velhari harmonies. Elder Thekmol says it represents the friendship between our peoples." Riley accepted the gift, feeling the warm vibration in her hands. Over the past months, she had learned that Velhari crystals weren't just minerals. They were living art, each one unique and expressing the emotions of those who grew them. "It's beautiful, Valerina. Thank you." Dr. Rodriguez approached from the research station they had built near the crystal groves. "Captain, you need to see the latest reports from Earth. The news about what happened here has spread across the entire galaxy." Riley followed Elena to the communications center, where dozens of messages were waiting. Some were from human colonies expressing pride in their species' actions. Others were from alien civilizations she had never heard of before. "This one came in this morning," Elena said, pulling up a transmission. "It's from a species called the Kithara. They're requesting human assistance with a territorial dispute. And this one," she continued, switching to another message, "is from the Nexari Commonwealth. They want to establish formal diplomatic relations." Riley scrolled through message after message. Species that had never shown interest in humanity were suddenly reaching out. Some wanted military assistance. Others offered trade agreements. A few simply wanted to understand how humans thought. "Elena, what's the common theme in all these messages?" Dr. Rodriguez smiled. "They all mention the same thing, Captain. They say they want to deal with the species that doesn't abandon their friends." That afternoon, Elder Thekmol called a gathering in the Great Crystal Amphitheater. Humans and Velhari had been working together to rebuild it, and the result was stunning. Crystal formations created natural acoustics that carried every word clearly, while human lighting technology made the space glow with soft, welcoming colors. "Friends," Elder Thekmol began, his voice carrying the musical tones that Elena had taught the humans to recognize as deep happiness. "3 months ago, we faced extinction. We called to the galaxy for help and the galaxy turned away. All except one species." He gestured toward the humans in the audience. "These people came not because they had to, not because it would benefit them, but because they believed it was right. They taught us that strength comes not from the size of your army, but from the size of your heart." The applause that followed mixed human clapping with Velhari harmonic tones, creating a sound unlike anything heard before in the galaxy. Riley stood to address the crowd. "Elder Thekmol, you give us too much credit. We didn't save you. We helped each other. Your people taught us about patience, about living in harmony with our environment. You showed us that technology should serve life, not the other way around." She paused, looking around at the mixed crowd of humans and Velhari. "But more than that, you reminded us why we explore the stars in the first place. Not to conquer or to profit, but to find friends in the vastness of space." That evening, as the twin suns set over the crystal gardens, Riley received a priority transmission from Earth. Admiral Torres's replacement, Admiral Patricia Liu, appeared on the holographic display. "Captain Chen, I have news that I think will interest you. The Galactic Council has formally recognized the Human-Velhari Alliance and has requested a meeting with human representatives." Riley raised an eyebrow. "The same Galactic Council that ignored the Velhari's calls for help?" "The very same. It seems our actions here have caused quite a stir. Several species are demanding explanations for why the Council didn't intervene. Some are threatening to leave the Council entirely if it doesn't change its policies." Admiral Liu leaned forward. "Captain, there's something else. We've been contacted by 12 different species in the past month. They all want the same thing. Defense agreements with humanity. They're afraid that if they ever face what the Velhari faced, everyone will abandon them too. And what does Command want me to tell them? That's up to you, Captain. High Command has decided to let you handle first contact protocols with new species. You've proven you have a gift for it. After the transmission ended, Riley walked through the rebuilt Crystal Gardens. In the soft glow of the formations, she could see humans and Velhari working together on evening projects. Some were tending new crystal growths. Others were sharing stories around small fires. Children from both species played games that somehow bridged the gap between their very different cultures. Corvash approached her, carrying 2 cups of the warm crystal tea that had become popular among the human settlers. "Captain Riley, you look troubled. Is there news from your people?" "Not troubled exactly," Riley replied, accepting the tea. "Just thinking about the future. It seems like our little intervention here has changed more than we expected." Corvash's skin showed thoughtful purple patterns. "Change can be frightening, but sometimes it is necessary. Before you came, the galaxy was divided into the strong and the weak, the predators and the prey. Now there is a third option." "What's that?" "Friends," he said simply. "Beings who stand together not because they must, but because they choose to." Over the following weeks, the changes in galactic politics became impossible to ignore. The Ethereal Consortium, embarrassed by their refusal to help the Velhari, began quietly supporting smaller species facing territorial disputes. The Silicon Federation started offering free defensive technologies to colonies that couldn't afford them. Even some Zephyrian worlds began questioning their empire's expansion policies. Reports filtered in of Zephyrian colonies declaring independence, inspired by the idea that cooperation might be more powerful than conquest. But the most significant change came from an unexpected source. 3 months after the battle, a ship arrived at Kepler 442c carrying representatives from 6 different species. They called themselves the Free Worlds Alliance, and they had a proposal. "We want to create something new," explained Ambassador Yethra of the Aquatic Alliance, speaking through a translation device. "A confederation based on mutual aid rather than mutual exploitation. Species that promise to help each other when help is needed." Captain Riley and Elder Thecamol sat together during the negotiations, representing their respective peoples. The discussions went on for days, covering everything, from trade agreements to mutual defense pacts. "The question," said Representative Colvin of the Ethereal Consortium, "is whether this alliance would welcome species that failed to act when they should have." Elder Thecmol's response surprised everyone. "Friend Colvin, the measure of a being is not their past mistakes, but their willingness to do better. If you promise to answer when others call for help, then you are welcome among us." The Free Worlds Alliance was officially established 2 weeks later in a ceremony that mixed traditions from all member species. The founding document was simple. "We, the undersigned civilizations, pledge to extend aid to any species facing extinction or displacement regardless of their ability to repay us. We choose cooperation over conquest, friendship over profit, and hope over fear." As Riley signed the document on behalf of humanity, she thought about Admiral Torres and all the humans who had died to make this moment possible. They had come to save one small colony and had somehow changed the entire galaxy. "Captain," Elder Thecmol said as the ceremony concluded, "there is something the Velhari would like to give to humanity." He led her to a special crystal formation that had been growing since the battle ended. It was larger than any other crystal on the planet, and its song was so beautiful that it brought tears to Riley's eyes. "This crystal contains the memory of everything that happened here," Thecmol explained. "The fear, the hope, the friendship, the sacrifice. We call it the memory of first friends. As long as it sings, no one will forget that when the Velhari called for help, the humans answered. Riley placed her hand on the crystal and felt its warm vibration. In that moment, she understood something important. Humanity had come to the stars looking for resources, for new worlds, for knowledge. Instead, they had found something much more valuable. They had found their purpose. As news of the Free Worlds Alliance spread across the galaxy, more species began reaching out. Some wanted to join. Others simply wanted to know more about these humans who had changed everything.